Johnson Viking 2 approved audio by D-Lab Electronics. 807's singing on the taffy.
Greetings from Terry at D-Lab. Guess what I've got on the bench? Another Johnson Viking 2. This one is in need of some audio repair. It's extremely low. So what's D-Lab going to do? Install the D-Lab approved audio mod. Alright, let's give her a quick cosmetic sweep before I start the repair. You can see this jobber looks great, very little missing paint. It has a 4-pin mic jack installed, and there is a slight issue with that. I'll show you that here in just a minute. Inside, the chassis looks beautiful, nice and clean. This is a kit Viking 2, not the factory model, because it does not have the sticker indicating factory built between those tubes, but whoever did it did a great job. So let's look underneath. So here we are, bottom side of the Viking 2. Now you can see somebody has added some filter caps, which is always a good thing because you don't want those old dried up cigars in there. They've also done some audio mods, it appears. Here is a push-to-talk relay, and this one has a couple caps on the back, so they're doing a voltage doubler circuit to operate the 12-volt relay, which is much better than throwing 120 volts through your microphone. So I'm good with the 12-volt relay. I'm not real keen on where it is. Back here is that mic jack. Now what has happened with the mic jack, when I got this thing, these wires are all twisted together. Because if you put a new mic jack in your Viking 2, you can't put the retaining nut inside of this chassis because there is actually a gap between the chassis and the front panel of about 1/4 inch. So if you try to tighten up your mic jack with that nut, guess what? Over time, when you're putting in your mic and you're screwing on the little collar, it spins, shorts out the wires. So the only way to do it right, unfortunately, is to pull the front panel and put the nut on the back of this surface, not the inside of the chassis. All right? So what we're going to do next is fire this thing up, take a look at the audio, and see what the issue is that's causing it to be low. Okay, there's one other thing I need to point out. Right here is your bias adjust resistor for your modulation current. There's some hocus pocus going on here. Little resistoroid, some kind of a transistoroid, and some diodes, right? So I need to investigate that, but I'm not going to do that until we figure out what the issue is with the audio. Well, I've still got her flipped up on its side. I've tuned her up. So there's my plate, my grid. There's my modulation current, which is a little high, about 80 mils. So here's the problem. I'm going to take my audio gain, okay? Let's put it to about 5. So here I am talking. You can see that meter just barely moving, right? I'm going to crank it up all the way. Now, what I'm using here is an amplified D104. So if I crank that baby all the way up with a stock Viking 2 audio section, that meter should just be going boing, 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 boing. It's not. She's really low, right? So let's take a look at it on my scope. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to inject a known level of audio so we can get a measurement. Then we'll investigate what's going on in the audio section. And then after I make my improvements, we'll repeat that test and see how much more gain we get. So without getting too scientific, all I'm going to do here is we're going to have a reference level. Okay, so the audio is set at 5. I'm going to key up the mic, talk into it. You can see my modulation meter is barely moving. All right. I have my scope monitoring the grid of one of the 807s. So here's the scope. I'm talking normally, and you can see I can kind of fill the screen. Let's take a look at the sine wave. Pretty clean. All right. So at 2 volts per division, talking normally, I can kind of fill the screen, right? The other thing is about a Viking 2 is when you're talking on these guys and you're really cranking on that audio, you should hear your voice resonating off the 807 tubes. I hear nothing. They're not working very hard, all right? So let's take a look at this audio section, see what needs to happen. I'll do the repairs, and then we'll rerun this test. Now we're going to just focus on the audio section, all right? I need to fix that first. I'm not going to fix the mic jack problem. I'm not going to do anything about the hocus pocus up here. I'm not going to do anything about the push-to-talk relay. Okay, we're going to leave all that the way it is. We're going to concentrate on this audio drive section because it's obvious that the 807s are starved, right? So here's the thing of concern to me. You see this nice Hammond 124E transformer? Somebody in the past did an audio modification to the Viking 2, all right? I did a little research and I found the use of the 124E on WA1 HLR's audio mod site, okay? And it was actually intended for a Valiant. He doesn't talk about using it on a Viking 2, okay? Anyway, this circuitry appears to be pretty close to what HLR was doing, so somebody thought it'd be really cool to put it in a Viking 2. But I found a little bit of an error that I need to point out, which I believe is the major cause of the low audio. So here's the handiwork. You can see some additional caps, some new resistoroids, all that. And it's not exactly what I'd consider the neatest job, but it obviously at one time was functional. But what I found, and just blew my mind when I saw this, you see this transformer? You see this green lead, there's a black lead, and there's a couple leads here that were never hooked up. That is actually the secondary side of the transformer. Now I'm going to cut to a picture. I want you guys to look at this diagram of the Hammond 124E. And you can clearly see what they indicate is the primary and the secondary windings of this transformer. So the primary is actually this brown, red, and blue, okay? So that is supposed to go to your driver tube, okay? Then it goes through the driver tube, it hits that primary, comes out the secondary, and the secondaries are supposed to go to the 807. This is in backwards. He's actually feeding the secondary with the driver tube, and the primary side is going to the 807. So that is probably what the issue is. I don't know how it ever worked. Anyway, what my plan is we're going to remove all this, and let me show you what I'm going to put in its place. So if you refer back to WA1HLR's instructions, he highly recommends the use of the 124B transformer rather than the 124E. Now remember, this was for the Valiant, okay? But what I'm going to do is put this transformer in the place of this guy, and this one's pretty easy to wire, right? Here's your primary, the red and blue. That's going to go to the 6AU6, and then these three leads here, the two greens and the black, they go to this terminal board that feeds the 807. Now, of course, I have to remove this cluster of goodies, so I'm pretty much just going to carve it out, clean up the tube socket pins. We're going to start from scratch. Install the new parts in the bowl. Naturally, you want to get in here first to make sure all your power supplies are discharged before you start cutting and messing around so you don't get poked. And yes, the transmitter's unplugged. So I am simply going to get in here and clippity-doo-dah out all these parts, okay? Because we're pretty much going to rebuild this thing close to the original Viking schematic, all right? But I'm going to change a couple capacitors and a couple resistors to give this thing a little bit better audio response. We're also going to remove this crazy array here, clean things up, buzz it out, make sure it's good, and we'll retest. So what's the wine tonight? This cool stuff that my wife picked me up, a red blend. Music for the night, Wide Awake by Motion Device, a very cool CD. I'd highly recommend it. Goes well with red wine and Johnson Viking 2 repair. So the new circuitry is all installed, including the Hammond 124B interstage transformer. My scope is hooked back up to the grid resistor. We'll go around here to the audio section. I'm going to turn the audio all the way down because I want to look at my modulation bias. Still got the same current, about 80 mils or so. So as a precaution, let's just go to about 2 on the audio. Let's see what we get. I'm going to key it up. See that swing on that meter? We had nothing like that before. And hear my voice? That's coming out of the 807, so let's take a look at the scope. Alright, so there's the scope. You can see she's like flying off the screen now. I'm still at the same 2 volts per division. So we have a megaton of gain on the Viking 2. Alright, so now it's time for a live audio check of the new modification to the Viking 2. We're monitoring on a realistic DX150B receiver. Here's the old microphonium. There's my dog. Here we go. Hey Chezzy, what are you doing? So there it is. I can get some feedback if I want. It's got a lot of power. Got the mic gain at 1. Listen to the clarity of that baby. So it looks like the audio section is doing the job. I still have some things in here to take care of. For example, this loose mic jack, okay? And this is the reason that the nut can't go in here. So unfortunately, to fix that, I have to pull the front panel off. But that will give me a good opportunity to clean and lube all the switches.
So listen to our audio now. Giving those 807s a workout. Well, so there you have it. One thunder boomer of a Johnson Viking 2 transmitter
With some really powerful modulation. And that is partially because I still am using an amplified D104 mic. You can also use a straight D104 with this circuitry, however you'll have to advance your audio gain. Now there is another mod out there that uses a 6C4 driver for the 807 interstage transformer with a 12AX7 tube as the input. If you have that configuration, you cannot use the power D104. She'll go bonkers, okay? So if you want to maintain use of this mic, this is the mod and this is the audio that you want from D-Lab Electronics. See ya.